and thank you for joining us. I think now now we're about 13. I'm sure more people will join as we go on.
Yes.
Yes, I want to welcome everybody, all the members of the Finance Coach BK community. We pride ourselves by saying we are one family. Some are very active online and some are behind the scenes. But we all have just one objective, and that's for us all to be financially fit and have financial freedom, have financial independence, and ultimately grow our wealth. We're starting this year on a very interesting note. I think it's the right time for us to focus on habits that we want to take forward in the year to make sure that we're in control of our finances. What we try to do is to teach ourselves money skills and develop habits that would help us grow our money. The conversation this evening, Funmi is my main guest, but she will be supported by another member. What will I call her now? She's okay. Let me use the word mentor. She's a mentor. I won't use the word sponsor. She's a coach behind the coach. And she will answer some questions after Funmi has answered the questions we have for her. So quickly, in the advert, I put Funmi's very long bio, but I'm not going to be able to read everything. But one of the reasons why I do that is so that people who would set aside 1 hour to come and join these conversations will know that we bring in people who are experts and who have experience to talk to the subject on the table. Funmi Onajide is a versatile professional with over 30 years corporate experience in a variety of external stakeholder roles in the financial, telecommunications, and consulting sectors in Nigeria. Funmi has a degree in politics and economic history, which she followed with a degree in law and admission to Nigerian Bar in 1989. She started her career at the Nigerian American Merchant Bank, working in corporate banking. Subsequent years, she transitioned into leadership and pioneering roles in private banking, asset management, investor relations, and corporate affairs. Some of the organizations she worked for include Fidelity Bank, UBA, Credit Lyonnais, which was eventually merged with Access Bank. Well, she left paid employment in 2015 as a general manager, corporate affairs, MTN Nigeria. And shortly after that, she started to work in a consulting capacity for multinational companies, including MTN. She's currently the chairperson of Brooks and Blake Reputation Managers and PR, Director Simon Watt and Lambert, Director UCML Capital Markets Limited, and Director Agar Communications. Well, the important part of the introduction this evening will be to let you know that Funmi is very passionate about people improving the management of their finances and being in control of their money. When we started planning this conversation, and we're talking about financial literacy and financial education, she was so passionate that if she could see, I saw the passion in her, like, if I can just get these young people and just put things into their head when to start and what not to do. And I said that, Funmi, you need to come and speak to my friends then. You need to come and speak to the people on my platform. So Funmi, thank you very much for joining us. I know everybody has full schedule. So for setting aside this 1 hour, thank you very much. I think now we have about, let me see, we have about 20 people online.
Oh,
yes,
wow.
We have about 20 people online and so, and I'm sure they're all looking forward to the conversation. Earlier on, I was testing to see if Pastor Remi's, if she had joined. So I know this is not a paid program. Nobody paid for this program, but I like to call it buy one, get one free, because you signed up to come and listen to Funmi this evening, but at some point, you would also listen to Pastor Remi, who is also an experienced finance professional. So yes, Funmi, we're going to start the conversation. We're going to start talking money, 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 money. I want to hear you speak with the same passion when we started this conversation. Well, I just want people around the call to know that there's just one objective of the conversation this evening, and it's just for you to learn as much as you can how to handle your money better and things that you need to do to grow your wealth early, and to pay attention to some things that we take for granted. Most things we take for granted when it comes to financial education, but when we listen to other people, then we're able to pick the areas where we have been a bit slow, or not to use the word careless. My first question, Funmi: financial fitness, financial freedom, growing wealth. I want you to speak from your experience, without telling us your bank account balances.
Yes.
Tell me, what's financial fitness and financial freedom? What is it to you?
Okay, so thank you very much, Bimbo, for inviting me, and thank you very much to everybody who has signed in. First off, I have to say that I don't consider myself a financial expert. All that has happened is that over 3 decades or so, I've simply put one foot in front of the other. And from very early on in my career, I had observed people way in front of me who had had fantastic careers, and then I was often very disappointed when I saw them years later, and somehow they didn't have the same gravitas, should I say, as they once had. So that's really scared me. So from very early on in my career, I was very, very conscious about my finances, which brings me to answering your question, Bimbo. When I think about financial fitness, what comes to mind is resilience, okay? And financial resilience to me means that you should always be ready for the unforeseeable, okay? In the world that we live in now, it's not uncommon, through no fault of your own, to be laid off work, for example, okay, for your role to now be surplus to requirements. It's not uncommon for your employer to shut down. So for me, financial fitness is, like I said, resilience, which is the ability to survive certain knocks to your normal income. So for me personally, what I always made sure that I did, no matter how little I was earning or no matter how much I was earning, was to ensure that I had a nest egg that could, through my savings initially, through another means, which I'll go into, I had a nest egg that will tide me over for at least 18 months. If for any reason I found my normal income truncated. So way back in the day, in the early 90s, when Bimbo and I were at NAMBO, and in those days, we were like we are now, we're suffering very rapid devaluation of the Naira. I was only an officer, I didn't earn very much. But what I immediately did as a way to inculcate some financial resilience, some financial fitness into everything I was doing, I'd take, no matter how little I could, from the small amount I was earning, and I'd buy a little bit of FX. I remember buying $20. I remember buying $50, $100, and I had a little safe. If I couldn't find dollars, I would buy a little bit of pounds, like that. And so at every stage, when I got my small salary, I'll back out X amount and buy whatever I could afford after I had taken care of all my obligations. Speaking of which, I always had a budget. And for me, till today that I don't work, I pay my staff and all my bills on the 25th because I had a budget. And on the 25th of every month, when we were paid, as soon as I get my salary, I will deduct all the things I'd budgeted for, and whatever was left, I'd divide into two. One half of that I used to use to buy my small Forex. And what I found was that in a very short space of time, with this, and I'm talking very early on in my career, with this Forex I was continually buying, I found that I was less anxious because I knew that if anything happened, if my job ended today, I'd be able to survive for a considerable amount of time, assuming that I didn't get another job. But for me, I always imagined the worst case scenario, okay, and planned for it. So I always had a plan A, B, and C. So for me, that is financial resilience. That's financial fitness. The fact that your finances can withstand any rigors, any hardship that's thrown your way. Okay, and when one abides with those type of things and you're financially fit, and I've described one way that you can be, it leads to financial freedom, because it means that you get into a culture of always thinking about the future. Okay, so even if you're promoted, your salary is doubled, your salary is tripled, you're always thinking about the future, and you're not necessarily adjusting your lifestyle to the extent of how much your salary has improved. I've always been of the view that there's a minimum acceptable lifestyle where you can live decently, where you can live comfortably. And anybody who knows me personally will know that I like the good things in life. But I also think that past a certain level, it all becomes excess and a little bit silly and self-indulgent, and you're showing off and, you know, wanting to write a narrative about yourself that's not necessary. So for me, financial freedom is a direct consequence of having financial fitness, because it means that over time, you have passive income and your resources start to work for you. Having said that, I don't think that having loads of Naira cash in your account or any kind of cash in your account makes you rich. I've always been brought up to think that having viable assets is what makes you wealthy, and wealthy is different from rich. You know, when I see people throwing money about, I often think to myself, you know, are they well invested asset-wise, or are they spending money they should be investing in long-term assets? A lot of young people I say to that a car is not in real terms an asset, you know, because it depreciates, there's a new model. And so, you know, you invest all of this money buying a very expensive car, and really is a depreciating asset, you know. So, you know, to gain financial freedom, you need to be invested in long-term assets that put you on a very firm footing, so that when you come to retirement, you have things to rely on. So I don't know if I've answered your question.
Yes,
so that's financial freedom.
Yeah,
yes.
you answered it so well, because in explaining financial fitness, you touched on the money skills that anyone who wants to have financial fitness should have. You talked about budgeting, you talked about saving very early in your career. You talked about putting your savings into investments that would not generate passive income for you. So we still have so many questions for you. So let's leave that there. And then it's also important the way you explain and interlocked financial fitness to financial freedom, because you have to take the right decisions, make the right money choices. You have to be financially fit before you can arrive at financial freedom. And thank you for sharing that experience of yours with us. And I think you alluded to it a bit, but why were you so passionate when we met in the salon? Why were you so passionate about people understanding financial education, understanding what they need to do? What's the driver?
Well, because from very early on and to present day, like I said, I keep seeing people that once upon a time I thought were very wealthy, were very well positioned. And fast forward X number of years, and, I think what happened, it's either they've gone very quiet or, and as a young person, I just found that very frightening, that people who I once idolized, families that I once thought, wow, people we used to look up to and think, oh, wow, they probably have the world at their feet. And X number of years later, you don't hear about them, or when you see them, you're slightly embarrassed because things have obviously changed.
Yeah.
Yes. And also because I'm aware that in this environment, wealth doesn't necessarily transfer from one generation to the next. All of us know of cases, even in our families, where they'll say, I'm on lower no. What happened to Awon Lowa no? And that's very, very common in Nigeria. And as opposed to how it is in the more developed world, where people who have money set up trusts. I was also in private banking. Okay, if you see in my bio, I started when I was in UBA in 1998. I was one of the pioneers starting private banking. And that again alarmed me a great deal because I was dealing with people who are high net worth individuals, and I haven't heard of any of those high net worth individuals anymore. I remember again when I was at UBA trying to run a high net program for high net worth individuals out of the trustees, out of UBA trustees, and trying to talk to people even about things as basic as wills, trying to talk to people about things like trust funds for their children. And from my own experience, I found that people were very reluctant to talk about things like that. They thought that I was being morbid, but a lot of family wealth, a lot of personal wealth is eroded because either the driver or the principal in the family has not made, they may have invested well, but they have not made adequate arrangements for the distribution of their assets when they're no longer here, okay, which leads to all kinds of problems. Yes, but I found that people were very reluctant to talk about that sort of thing. I mean, I remember about 12 years ago when I called my lawyer and said I wanted to write a will, he started crying. He thought I was ill.
You had an illness.
So I said, no, I'm not ill. He was so traumatized. And I'm a lawyer myself. So I actually wrote it myself and sent it to him to correct and all of that. And I explained to him that, this is just something I'm doing for the benefit of my children. There's nothing wrong with me. There doesn't have to be anything wrong with you. Again, it's planning ahead. Okay, it's in a way financial freedom for the next generation. And of course, I'm not suggesting that the next generation rely on what you're leaving for them. Okay, because as I tell my own children, even an inheritance is a gift. Okay, if you think you can live on your inheritance, you'll find that no matter how large that inheritance is, you're living on a very fixed income. And the way the world is, people your age whose fathers didn't leave them anything will earn their own money in excess of what you are relying on that's been generated by another human being. So, it's all linked in. And yes, I am passionate about it.
Yeah, I hear you. I think your experience when you were in banking and, the way we, looking around and seeing people who had wealth and all of that filtering away is more than enough
Yes.
To push your passion.
Yes.
Thank you very much. at the beginning of the year, everyone sets New Year resolutions, and we all want to do things better. Most of the time, some people by February, March, they've forgotten the resolutions, they've forgotten what they set out to do. But I want you to share with us some smart money actions. I know you've spoken about some answering the first question, but if you were to be advising, okay, like you're talking to the audience now, the 30 of us around the call, what would be smart money actions that you think we should focus on this year?
Okay, so I try very hard not to be prescriptive because everybody's circumstances is different, okay? And everybody has different perspectives. But from my own perspective, I think the important things to note as a background and to give context is the fact that us just sitting here and being alive, we're probably 100% poorer because of almost 100% devaluation since 2020. Okay, am I right, Bimbo?
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, it's like 100% devaluation since 2020. So without having to do anything at all, like, I said, I'm when it comes to money, I always like to look at the worst case scenario. So here's what I tell myself: we're 100% poorer, cash poorer. Okay, if you have assets like property and all of that, what I found is that as the currency, at least in Lagos, in the prime part of Lagos, as the Naira is devaluing, I find that property prices try to keep up with the dollar. So that's why you'll see that cost of housing, cost of property is going up because they try some kind of parity in terms of valuation of property. But assets aside, in terms of cash and in terms of your OPEX, you're 100% poorer, okay? The currency is devalued. Official inflation rates are about 22%. But when I look at a certain basket of goods, certainly the basket of goods that I am involved with, that's food, that's goods and services, that's goods, that's electricity, that's diesel, that's petrol, that's services. I would say that inflation rates are closer to 50%. So that is the background, okay? I'm assuming that we're not in a position to increase our incomes by 100%. If you are, then fantastic, you're in a good place. But for most people, it's very difficult to do that. Well, if you're in paid employment, certainly not. There's no business now that has the financial fitness to increase your wages by 50%, let alone 100%. If you're in business or in consulting like I am, it's very difficult. So for me, with that backdrop, and also knowing that the fuel subsidy is going to be removed, so there's probably going to be more inflation. So I always look at the worst case scenario. It's going to be very bleak. So I don't think that this is a time when we can, play around with words like, oh, New Year resolution. It's not a resolution. It's not a wishful resolution. It's what you have to do or you will sink. Okay. And for me, what I have done is that I've cut back on things that are not necessary. Okay. In terms of food. Okay. There's some things that are just luxuries. I've cut down on the luxuries. I've cut down on eating out.
Eating out.
When we were growing up, eating out was for birthdays. Yeah. Eating out was for special times like birthdays, anniversaries. But the way the world has become now, eating out became an everyday thing, takeouts and all of that. All of that is out, especially people who have young children. They have to know that, a disciplined approach has to be taken to that. So not completely out. We go back to the good old days where moderation was key, okay? Because you will admit that we've become rather self-indulgent over time. And it's not just in Nigeria, it's everywhere in the world, with availability of takeout, Uber Eats, this deliveries, and so on. So all of those things out. Your food basket, cut out the things that are not necessary. In terms of things like running your generator, diesel, as we know, diesel has doubled. So for me, I've gotten used to having a very specific timetable for putting on my generator. I have nothing to prove to anybody. So if anybody comes to my house in the afternoon and I look rather hot and sweaty, it's because diesel is 800 naira a liter, okay? So those are the things, you know, that I've done, just really, really cutting back and realizing that in Nigeria and globally, we're going through a hard time. Same thing with traveling. I used to travel quite a bit, but as we all know, last year, I guess, you know, the airlines can't get their money out. And so tickets went up. Yes. So look, I'm a BA Gold Card member, okay? But BA became too expensive, okay? And so I explored other alternatives. And I found that, for example, Rwanda Air has very good prices, okay? And I found out that the journey is not dissimilar to going in terms of timing, the travel time is not dissimilar to Air France KLM, okay? So it's, I think, 5.5 hours to Kigali, 1 hour turnaround, and 3 hours or 3.5 hours to Lagos, something like that. So not dissimilar. So I'm just trying to describe, without being prescriptive, the kind of changes that I've made. And they're not, sorry.
Go on, please, go on.
They're not resolutions. It's not like I sat down on December 31st and said, this is what I'm going to do. For me, that has never worked.
Yeah, I was trying to clarify the question and your response has dealt with it. What I was trying to get at is what can people do better? What can we do better? You know, I was trying to save the question about the changes that we are expecting from the 2023 budget to later. But you've alluded to it because things are going to be tight. I think when I was advertising this program, I did put there that I'm not trying to scare anybody, but the reality is that things would be tighter down the road. The fuel subsidy has not yet been removed. We can see the hike in transportation, you know, from scarcity, occasional scarcity in the petrol stations. When the subsidy is removed and the fuel price goes up, it's going to worsen. So what I wanted you to talk about is the changes. What can people do, you know, to make sure that they stay in control? And you have actually answered that question from your own personal point of view. So people around the call, there may be people around the call. Most people around the call may not be world travelers, you know. They may not be people running generators. But what you are saying is that we have to look inward and begin to manage our resources better. I was talking to one of my friends earlier on, who is also one of the mentors of this program, and he said to me that, still talking about the impacts of the subsidy removal, that we would all have to do more with less.
Yeah.
You know, the purchasing power of the money in our hand, the value would reduce, and we still have to do the things we need to do. And that's exactly what you've explained. So different people around the call, some people, I can see a friend of mine, you know, another colleague from Abuja, people are living in different places. My friend earlier on joined from Ibadan. So there will be different things that people will need to work with and work at to make sure that they can stay afloat. And not only stay afloat, because I also still think that we should also still make room for savings, you know. no matter how tight it is. Remember where you started from when we talked about something so early. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, Bimbo, I think what I'm saying really is that the context I've given is that all of us are 100% worse off. So the examples I've given is cut your coat according to your new size.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Cut your coat. In summary, everything that I was saying, flight, AC, this generator, is cut your coat according to your new size.
Absolutely.
Because your purchasing power 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, unless of course, you know, your income has quadrupled in line with devaluation and inflation, you have much less. So you have a new size. So cut your coat and don't be ashamed to do so.
Absolutely.
Okay. And when you cut your coat according to your new size consistently, that's still with your eye on doing the necessary savings that you have to do. And you can do it if you are cutting your coats to your new size, not your old size.
Yes. I like actually your comment that you have nothing to prove to anybody. And no matter the season of life that we're in, we must always think of ourselves first. When you think of other people, then you are under pressure. Okay, I have some more questions for you, and I'm determined not to overshoot time. Quickly, I'm going to go to the one that I know really you're passionate about. That's about transiting from paid employment to self-employment. I know you have over 30 years of experience, but you only transited to self-employment in 2015, right? I don't know how many years for me were you in paid employment. I was trying to work out the math because I don't have the exact number of years experience that you have.
From 1989 to 2015.
Can you work out the math?
Anyway,
what I was trying to say is that most of the time, most of your years of experience, you were in paid employment.
Yes.
Okay, so let's not waste time with the math there.
Yeah.
So at least you would have done over 20 years in paid employment. Okay, from your experience, what are the key things that prepared you for self-employment? What are the key things? Let me just add to that. Were you ready for self-employment or not? If you were ready, what did you prepare ahead? And if you were not ready, what are the lessons looking back, when you transited from paid employment to self-employment?
Okay, so when I was in paid employment, my last employer was MTN. Okay, and by the time I joined MTN, I'd had a whole career in the bank. So, I knew what it was like to be going into a new industry where you are paid very well, there are good bonuses and all of that. But from my banking experience, I knew that the gravy train would not last forever. So apart from my usual savings and investments and all of that, it got to a stage where I said to myself, I think it was when I turned 45, I said to myself, now I've been in paid employment. At that time, it was like for, 16 years. I said now, and I'd always had very good jobs. I said now, I want to know what it's like to take 1 naira and make it to 2.50 naira. So what I did was I always had a passion for exotic leatherware, for collecting, because I used to travel a lot around Africa. I always used to collect exotic handmade things, leather, all sorts of things. So I thought, okay, well, that's something I know about. Let me even start a business doing that. So I did some research, got together my capital, and on the side, I opened a store and I started to a store called Regalo in Lekki here, and started to, retail these things that I would curate, because I was always traveling anyway. So it was no effort for me to bring all of these things in. Many of the suppliers were people who I had bought things from anyway. So it was very easy for me to arrange. And so I started, I think, what is called my side hustle, okay, purely to dip my toe in the entrepreneurial space, because I had no idea. My jobs were so demanding, I didn't have time for a side hustle. But because I was determined, I did it, and I opened the shop. I spent all my weekends there. I mean, I wouldn't say that I was entirely successful, okay? Because with the benefit of hindsight, I didn't really think it through well enough because I was in a very demanding job. But it was my toe in the water of running my own business. And from that experience, I knew that after I left, I didn't want to sell anything. I knew that that wasn't my strength. So I knew that when I left paid employment, I would like to be doing what I was doing at MTN in a different capacity, not as an employee, because in the work that I did, I used to employ consultants to help me. And I found myself in a position where I knew more than the consultants. So I said, what makes them consultants? They're meant to be advising me. I'm the one training them. So in summary, what I'd say is that I saw a gap in the market based on the work I was doing. So, and of course, like I told you, I tried my hands on retail and I wasn't too sure that that was the way to go. So it was very natural for me to transit after I left paid employment into the consulting space. Now, I will also say that once I made up my mind that that was the way to go, I started to, I decided that because of the nature of the work, I didn't want to start the business from scratch, i.e., I could see that it will take a long time to train up, employ and train up staff, put processes in place and all of that. And it's a very competitive business, the consulting, the kind of consulting I am doing. So what I did for the last, I would say 3 years before I left paid employment was to scan the environment and look at the consulting firms and assess them and see how they were doing and how I could fit in. And I was interacting with them all of the time, not necessarily the ones that worked with MTN, but across board, because I was in that industry. And just by interacting with them and participating on professional fora and so on and so forth, I began to, even before I left, get a lot of overtures from some of those consulting firms to come and join them on the board. Okay, so I knew that that was the way I was going to go, because I thought, just pursue what you know, what comes naturally to you. And I also knew that it will benefit me to join an existing organization. Okay, so a couple of organizations invited me to join the board as soon as I left. And I joined their boards. And I spent the next couple of years observing them as non-executive, just director, observing them, looking at the corporate governance structure and so on, looking at their financials, looking at their clients, looking at their corporate culture. In all of this, I made sure that I was acting more as an executive director than a director. I knew where I was going. I chose to go on the firms, on the board of firms where I knew they were benefiting from me. But they didn't realize that I too was assessing them. So what happened was, after a couple of years, when I was sure, I made an overture to them to say, look, of course, by then I'd given them so much value, they were anxious to keep me on the board. So I said, actually, I'd prefer to come in as an equity partner. Okay. And by that time, it was clear that the relationship was of mutual benefit. So in summary, what I'm saying is that it was something that was quite deliberate. Okay, I first discovered or decided on the way I wanted to go in self-employment. And I was very, very deliberate about looking for the opportunities. I was very, very clear in my mind that even though I had extensive contacts and I could run the business by myself, it will take far too long in a competitive market to come up to speed. And so I decided the way to go was to partner with other people. It's different for different people, different industries, and so on. But I think what to bring out here is how deliberate you have to be about determining what you want and going after it. Okay, determining what you're good at, where you can make money. And it's not just about money. I think long-term, to sustainably make money, you have to be delivering value. So those are the things that people should look at. I see that many people feel pressured into being, to selling things, you know, oh, open a shop, oh, you're a business. Not everybody is a businessman like that. Not the people who make a fortune selling lace. If you're that type of, if that's where your talent lies, fine. But what I'm saying is that before you pivot into self-employment, you have to be very, very true to yourself. What you're good at, what you're passionate about, where you can add sustainable value. Okay, and being very deliberate about going out and looking for the opportunities. The opportunities can be by way of partnership, like I've described, but it's a deliberate effort. And, you know, you have to be very self-aware and look inwards. You can't look at anybody else and say, oh, Lagbaja did this, that, and you're not Lagbaja. You have your own unique skills, your own unique competencies. And so you just have to follow that. So I hope I've answered the question.
Yes, you have, Funmi. Thank you. So we have to be intentional.
Yes.
And I hear you, it's something you started looking at like 3 years before you eventually left paid employment. And thank you.
Can I just say, Bimbo, that I didn't leave voluntarily. I didn't leave voluntarily.
Okay,
I was asked to, yes, I was asked to leave because I was asked to leave because they called, it was a right sizing within the organization. And what they did was that they asked people who are very senior, some people who are very senior to leave, And for me, unless I got rid of my immediate boss, there was nowhere else to go. And as you know, in large organizations, you've worked for Shell. For senior people like that, they exit you. So if I didn't have that financial resilience, what would I have done? So I literally came back from holiday, from vacation, and resumed at work. And this was at 8 o'clock. At 5 o'clock, they called me and said, so. I said, fine. Do you know what? The next day, I got up and I resumed in said shop. The shop I was telling you about.
You were putting together.
You know, the retail shop, yes, I put together. And, you know, that just underscores the importance of having fallback. We're talking about financial fitness. So presumably I'd been let off this really well-paying job. And the very next day, I had somewhere to go to. I put my feet up, called for the statement of account of the shop, and thought, wow, I have all of this money to do this, that, and the other. Okay, the business, I eventually wound down the business. But the point is, I had options. And it was sitting there in the comfort of my AC shop with a bit of money in my corporate account that I was able to finalize all my plans for long-term self-employment. It was from that shop that a month later, the same MTN invited me back as a consultant.
Yeah, Funmi, thank you very
Do you
much for
understand?
being very, very authentic. Thank you for
Yes.
correcting that impression that, because I was leading you on that you left because you had planned to leave. That's I think is one of
Sorry,
the.
I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now? I'm not on mute.
I can't hear you.
Uh-oh.
Yes, I can hear you now.
You can hear me, okay. Also, no, I was just thanking you for being authentic and correcting the impression, but also in explaining the way you left your paid employment. You also brought out the reasons, many more reasons why we need to be financially fit. You know, when you were talking earlier on, you mentioned that you had 18 months, your emergency fund, you had enough that could take care of you for 18 months. It's something that everyone around the call should also work towards, having an emergency fund. And honestly, except even in family businesses, sometimes you're asked, you may have to step down. So it's always good to plan ahead. And like you say, the word you use is financial resilience, to have a ready fallback. I have just one more question for you, Funmi, so that I can ask Pastor Remy some questions as well. I know you've already said to us that all side hustles should not be, we can't all be traders as a side hustle. Can you just share some side hustle ideas that you think can thrive in Nigeria?
That's very tough.
I can come back to you.
You know, yeah, come back to me. That's very tough.
Okay, take a cup of glass of water.
Bimbo, I'm not being evasive. No,
I know,
I'm not being
understand.
evasive because side hustle. Okay, it depends on the person. It depends on what your skills are. I have a friend. A mutual friend of both of us, Bimbo. Unfortunately no longer with us. Even with her top paid job, she was making money hand over fist selling fabric. You know who I'm talking about, Bimbo. So it depends on people. There's another friend I have, as sophisticated as she looks. She has a handful of Nigerian breweries distributorship, flour mills distributorship, Maggi distributorship.
And
So
maybe a couple of keke marwas around.
Exactly. So it depends.
Okay.
Yes.
I'll leave that out, and I'll just come ask you this final one, because you're a lawyer and because of your experience in the corporate world. Side hustle. People, I find that people don't put good structure around it. They're very careless. Some are doing some very good things that can fetch them money, but they don't put good structure around their businesses. What should people do to make sure they preserve or they put the right structure around their side hustle? I want to talk from a legal point of view.
Well, I think you should. The entity should be properly incorporated. Okay. No point trading as Bimbo or Funmi. Okay. It should be properly incorporated. Once it's properly incorporated, I think you should always make sure that you fulfill your statutory obligations, because now the tax authorities are very, very bullish. And even as you're advertising on Instagram and so on and so forth, they have they have ways of
identifying.
Statutory and sometimes regulatory obligations. I think that you should fulfill that. The fact that it's a side hustle doesn't mean you should be careless, because all those things I've described also protect you, okay? Because if it's a legal entity, if you are fulfilling your legal and statutory or regulatory obligations, already you have some kind of structure in place, okay? If you have staff, they should be properly employed, Okay. I see many people just informally employing people and giving them power over their money or their affairs. I think it's a very dangerous thing. People have to be properly employed, you know, with proper employment letters, pictures, and all of that. Because it's a side hustle, doesn't mean that it should be casual and careless, okay? Even at my shop, when I had a manager, she was properly employed, registered, you know, employment form, so on and so forth, pay slip, and all of that. It protects you. Many people have had their staff steal from them and disappear. So I think that you should put proper structure around it. It takes effort. You might think that it costs money, but it'll cost you more when FIRS comes after you. You should pay your VAT, okay, and all of those things. Very important. It's a side hustle, but if it's a business that you want to continue sustainably, then you should do it properly.
Thank you very much, Funmi. Thank you for sharing your experience. And I must say again, for being so authentic. I'd just like to take a cup of water while I ask Pastor Remi some questions. We'll be wrapping up very soon. I see us overshooting by 10 or 15 minutes. Pastor Remi, are you going to show your video or you're just going to answer my questions?
Okay, Bimbo, hi.
Hello, thank you so much for joining.
Just Remi, please.
Oh.
Is that Remi showing on wall?
Yes, Funmi, hi. That was awesome.
Hi, Remi.
Yeah, hi. That was a really nice session. I was so blessed by everything you said. I'm not even sure.
Thank you.
Well done.
Thank you so much, Remi. She says I shouldn't call her Pastor Remi today. That's what I call her in private. Okay, Remi. Remi, I said by Funmi joining us, it's buy one, get one free because Remi is it's like a top up. But I'm not going to say the organization she works for, but she's a finance director in one of the top oil and gas companies in Nigeria. So she's an experienced finance professional. So you should take every response she gives to my questions seriously today. So Remi, thank you very much. I'm looking for, are you sure you don't want to show your face? I'm trying to spotlight you. Can you put on your video? Or you can?
Not very strong. So that might be the reason. Because I've taken, my video is actually.
No, I can see you now. I can see you now.
Okay, all right. So if it's off, that means my network.
Okay, because of the bandwidth.
You can hear me. Yes, yeah.
Okay, yeah. Okay. Let me say Happy New Year. I'm seeing you for the first time. Online. Happy New Year. Thank you so much. And indeed, thank you Funmi on behalf of everybody around the call.
That was really awesome.
Yeah. What I liked about it was the authenticity, the way she, some of us will call up some of the stories.
Yes.
This year, Funmi, sorry, I can't spotlight you. And I
was taking notes as well.
Sorry, Remi, what did you say?
I was taking notes, of everything she said.
Yeah, that's why I like all these money conversations. You would certainly take something away. You take something away. Let's use the remaining time so well. So I said, Remi, when I was wishing people Happy New Year from the Finance Coach BK platform, I said to people that they should not walk alone this year. That they should not. I'm not sure if I sent it to you, but it was one-page post that I used in welcoming people to 2023. And I said people should not walk alone this year. You didn't want me to call you Pastor Remi, so you are Mentor Remi. Remi is one of the people that I will call my
Bimbo, are you Liverpool?
Adama, Liverpool. No, I'm Arsenal. What's up? Anyway, so Remi, is it the quotation? So what I want you to speak to.
You are talking about walking alone now, so that's Liverpool people.
Thank you, Adama. Thank you for joining us from Abuja, and thank you for interrupting. Asna. Anyway, Remi, When I say people should not work alone this year, I want you to talk to the people around the call about the importance of having a finance coach and a financial mentor. The place of mentoring, in financial freedom and growing wealth. It seems to some people may be something very trivial, but I know it's very important, and I want you to share that importance with people.
Yeah. Okay, thanks, Bimbo. I think the key thing is why do we have a mentor anyway? The reason you have a mentor is mainly to be able to learn from other people and to have people who you're accountable to, people who can help you on the path that you're walking. Most times, your mentor is someone who has either walked the journey ahead of you or slightly ahead of you. And therefore, people say, well, you don't have to make your own mistakes. You can always learn from other people's mistakes. And I guess the other reason why it's important that you have a mentor and a financial mentor is the power of compounding. Two heads are better than one. It's, that's something that we all know, that it's better to have, to have other people's counsel, counsel from other people, not just yourself, because nobody knows it all. And nobody, the path of financial freedom, the path of, sustainable, which is stealing from Funmi's quote, sustainable financial, investing and a sustainable financial lifestyle is one that you actually need all hands on deck, and you can't do it alone. It's better to make sure that you have someone who can guide you, who you can bounce ideas off with, somebody who has, had good experiences and bad experiences, particularly bad experiences that you can actually learn from, and therefore, so you don't go and do the same thing over and over again. I think that's probably it for me in a nutshell.
Yeah, thank you very much. When it comes to investing and making financial decisions, it's important to have someone to check these things with. Thank you for that response. And I'm very, very happy to announce to people around the call that Remy is one of those that I always check my investment decisions with. And I learn from her mistakes, and we all learn together and grow together. Thank you, Remy. Another question.
You forgot to say that I also check from you.
Oh, yeah, we check with ourselves. Yeah, we check with ourselves. And it's very important because, like you said, it's even more important to have a mentor who has made more mistakes so that you don't make those mistakes. I wanted, because I talk about this a lot online, but I wanted the people around the call to hear it from another professional, from another expert, the importance of finance mentoring and coaching. My favorite model for financial fitness and financial freedom, everyone who follows my page knows I talk about the ESI model. I say if you apply the ESI model, you would not be worse off financially. You would always be better off financially. Some of the things Funmi spoke about earlier on are around the three elements of the model. But I want to ask you specifically, this model says earn more, save better, and invest well. People around the call may be wondering that you said things will worsen this year, and you're still telling us to earn more, save better, and invest well. I think I asked Funmi that question. I want to ask you also, how can people around the call earn more? How can they earn more? What side hustle can we do to support our current income?
So, and I know that when you asked Funmi that question, she pleaded the Fifth Amendment, and I really understand where she was coming from, because things that are out there that you can do. There's so many things that are out there that you can do. I think one must not be prescriptive, but just important that we look for those additional streams of income. Now, when Funmi was talking, she talked about somebody who had distributed, and I thought to myself, I've actually never thought of that. I've never actually. I'm just being very, very serious. It's just something that has never occurred to me, and I thought, wow, that's an amazing. That's an recommendation on this call today. So I think for me to go specifically and say, oh, this is the business you should get into, or and so on and so forth might be a bit more challenging, but it's definitely that we scout the environment, we look for the gap, and we try and fill that gap. What I always say, over 200 million people in Nigeria. And some people say, oh, I don't want to do that business because somebody else is doing it. That's nonsense, because, you know, as the Yoruba people say, Ojo Otayefo, there are 200 people. And if you are doing a business that every one of those 200 million people has access to, then it doesn't matter the fact that Bimbo or Funmi or Dumbi or whoever is doing that business. Everybody has access to it. But the important thing is that you have to make sure that you set up the structure properly. As Funmi said, you know, just reiterating her, set up the, you know, make sure you're well incorporated, you have good staff, you employ your staff in the proper way, you have a business plan, you have a business model, you know when you're making money, you know, because a lot of, that's the other thing.
Yes.
People say business, and really what they're doing is they're selling stuff and they're spending the money. There's no, you know, people spend revenue, not profits.
Yeah.
So you have to make sure that you have the right structure and you understand the business that you are doing. Yeah, you understand the business that you're doing. One thing I always say that I'll just say here, and it's not something you find in a textbook, but in particularly in Nigeria, and alluding to what Funmi said earlier about the exchange rate and so on and so forth. Honestly, any business you do that you cut out having to spend foreign exchange. In Nigeria, I think it's important, because then you don't have to rely on, you know, access to forex, you know, making sure you can buy it, your replacement costs, and so on and so forth. And I know that most things are linked to forex, but you don't have to be the one necessarily in control of that. You know, so it may start small. And the other thing I'll say is that start small. You know, don't despise the days of small beginnings. If you make 10,000 naira profit this month, in 3 years' time, the problem we have in Nigeria is everybody wants to be big now, immediately. You know, it's line by line, precept by
microwave wealth.
Exactly. You know, you have to build up the business, know where you're going, have a plan, work towards that plan, and, you know, with God's help, you'll get there. So that's what I'll say about that, without necessarily talking about specific businesses. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much, Remy. What's important is the conversation this evening has brought out the fact that there will be pressure on what everybody is earning by June. You know, even before June, Funmi said it, the inflation is about 22% right now. With when you remove the subsidy, the inflation will be harder. Things will be more expensive. So we all have to look for what we can do better. Yeah, I understand that we can't prescribe what people should do in terms of side hustle, but people should look around, like Funmi was looking around for the gap, you know, and then look for what you can either by service or product. I had a guest once on one of my programs who said, the fact that you're in Nigeria does not mean that you cannot offer services even internationally. So look for what you can do, you know, and try and make sure that you have more than one source of income where possible. We're going to wrap up soon, Remy, but I want to ask you, what's your key principles and guidelines for investing? What are the key principles? You know, the ESI model says invest well. What are the things that you check out when you want to invest?
So I think, for me, I think you must have an investment strategy. And that may sound, you know, very highfalutin, you know, what's an investment strategy? But you must have the reasons why you're investing. So you could be investing, depending on where you are in your stage in life. I think you have to decide what is most important to you. So at this particular point of time in my life, I needed to make sure I had income, you know, for my investments, you know, to spend on children's school fees, and to make sure at the same time that, you know, we could also convert those into growth, you know, assets at the right time, you know. So I think the very first thing is that first decide, why am I doing this? Why am I investing? It's good to invest. Everybody should invest. But what are the reasons? What is my driver? I think that's important. The second thing is diversification. It's important that you have different investments. When you start investing, you have different investments in different sectors over different types of investments that hopefully are inversely correlated to each other. And by that, I mean, there's certain investments that you can make that if one goes down, then everything goes down. But there are other investments that whilst one is going down, the rest are appreciating. So diversification, whether you're doing property, you have money market securities, you have some people invest in gold. When I say gold, I don't mean necessarily the gold that we wear in our hair.
In gold bars.
In our hair.
You're talking gold
Because when I
bars.
say that, a lot of people say, "Oh yes, I like," but it's up to you really, because at the end of the day, if you can afford it, it is an appreciating asset most times. One thing that Funmi said, that I also agree with, is about make sure that the asset you're investing in is an appreciating asset, not a depreciating asset. So appreciating assets are assets like property, real estate, for example. It's appreciated. And even if you can't buy a house, you could be in a situation where you could invest in funds that invest in real estate and property. And going back to the point about real estate keeping in line with inflation, at least in certain areas of the country, as was mentioned earlier, it's quite important that that happens. If you're investing in a real estate fund, make sure you know what you're doing, what type of properties they are investing in, and who is managing those type of funds. So for me, I think diversification too is very important. Now, the third thing is do it, and I'll explain what I mean by that. I talk to a lot of young people, and because there's a program I run with another sister of mine on financing and investing, and we do it like 3 or 4 times a year. It runs for 6 weeks, and a lot of people say to us, "Oh, but I don't have enough money to invest." If you earn money, if you're actually earning, you have enough money to invest. Now, you could be earning, for the sake of argument, let's say 50,000 naira. You need to make sure that of that 50,000 naira, you have an amount that you're setting aside, both for your savings and for your investments, as well as, let me just slip this in, particularly if you're a Christian, your tithes. It's because that in itself is a form of investment.
It's an investment.
Yes. So do it. Don't wait. I know many people who are in a time of life that we are in now. I mean, I'm approaching 60, and I know they've lost a lot of ground. And that's because they always waited for the big thing to come. I'll start investing when I, do this deal, and then I make 10 million or 100 million. For now, I only have 500,000, so it's not enough. And that's the biggest mistake that people make. So whatever level you are on, you can invest. Just make sure that you plan it, you have your right investment strategy. You plan it, you take it out of the income that you have, you put in your investment, and the power of compounding interest, investing, reinvesting what your returns are. You'll be amazed over 5-10 years where you've gotten to with that little that you think that you have, that you're putting into your various investments.
Thank you very much, Remy. Yeah, thank you very much. Because today's conversation is not purely around investment, I will not be able to ask you many more questions around investing. But I want people around the call to know that we have a recording on the Finance Coach BK YouTube channel, where we had a 1-hour session with Mr. Ayode Diebo, an investment professional. And you can watch that recording, and there's answers to all sorts of questions you may have on investing. Remy said, invest, just start. Don't worry about what level of income you are at. If you listen to that conversation, and I do have an article on my website on the possible investment options and opportunities for low income earners and high income earners. Remy talked about diversification. If you read that article, or if you listen to Mr. Odejebo, you would also find all that in there. Thank you very much, ladies. I have one more question for you, Remy.
Yeah.
And you just have to answer this. So I'm going to come back to you for your final word.
Okay.
Without giving away too much about you, Remy, I know you're very big in giving, and you said to me to call you Remy, I should not call you Pastor Remy. And you, some seconds ago, started talking to us to remember to tithe. That's why I was calling you Pastor Remy, because you are Pastor Remy. I know you're very big in giving. You support many charities, many NGOs. In this environment, it's actually difficult to have wealth. I mean, to be comfortable and to, if you have a good heart, it's very difficult to look away from the needy. The question I have for you is, how do you balance your giving? How do you balance helping others and still keep an eye on growing your wealth? I don't know if my question is clear.
Yeah, it is. It is clear. It is clear.
Okay.
Well, I think giving is something that, particularly in the environment that we're in, is something that we all have to practice. But for me, my key driver for giving is that it gives me joy. It actually gives me joy. It makes me happy to help other people. And especially if I can help them so that they can now become helpers to other people. Yeah. So it's not just about giving out handouts, but to be able to be in a position to support people so that they can stand on their own 2 feet and they can then in turn pay it forward. And without wanting to plug Bimbo's organization, RDSF. I talk about it all the time, and it's one of the organizations which for me always blows my mind because of the great work that they're doing and, of sowing into people's lives. So therefore, if that type of organization exists, as you are doing in RDSF, then I think it behoves on me and anybody I know, that we too must also try and do our very best, to be able to help, so that because we can see how it's transforming people's lives. But to answer your question directly, how do you manage giving? Because there are other ways and means that one can also give, manage it without affecting your own personal wealth. The reality is that whatever you give, it may leave your pockets, but it doesn't leave your life. It may leave your pocket, but it doesn't leave your life, because it means that you have been a blessing. And if you are a blessing, you will always be blessed, by God, by men, and by other people. And even if it doesn't necessarily mean that whatever you have less multiplies. It means that, maybe there are other ways and means that, what you need, your own needs are then being met. So I go back to my point that to be able to give, for me, it's a privilege and it's an opportunity. It is actually a privilege. And if I give anyone or give to any, organization, I'm always so grateful, that Lord, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to be able to do this. Because I also believe that there's nothing I have that belongs to me entirely. We've talked about generational wealth, transfer of generational wealth. Everything we have, comes from, there's a source. We are just channels, and we just must make sure that we are responsible channels. And in that, probably my final word on this is, make sure you're a responsible channel, because it's very easy in our environment, all sorts of people come with all sorts of requests and so on and so forth, whilst it's a privilege and an opportunity, you must also keep your pragmatic head on, and make sure you're not just feeding you're not just feeding people's whims and caprices, but
You're giving
actually
to fertile ground.
exactly. You're actually. I didn't want to use that phrase, but
I know why.
you're actually giving to fertile ground, as you said, sowing on fertile ground that is it's a beneficial to all. So, and once you start at the beginning, if there's nothing wrong with saying, I have 100 naira, and of this 100 naira, I'm going to make sure 10 naira I'm giving, is for all the causes I'm giving to, or the people I'm giving to. There's nothing wrong with that, but make sure you plan it. But you can't give what you don't have as well. So also be very careful about that. Don't give out what you don't have. You can only give out of what you have, and that helps a lot.
Thank you very much, Remy, for adding color to the conversation this evening. And Funmi, thank you very much. You didn't hesitate when we got into this conversation in the salon, and you were like, Bimbo, we need to teach more people, we need to educate more people, we need, the passion. And then I started chasing you in spite of your schedule, and we were able to land today's session. Thank you very much, Funmi. I would come back to you to give a last word, but I think it's only fair that we introduce some diversity into this conversation this evening. So I have another of my friends online, and I just want him to spend 2 to 3 minutes to talk about what he wants the attendees this evening to watch out for, given the things that are hidden in the 2023 budget. Pastor Nii, I will have to put Pastor before your name, or I won't agree like Remy to call you Nii, but I'm looking for you online now. Can you please unmute, sir, and share your thoughts quickly? Adam, okay. Adam, I will be coming to you after Pastor Nii, so please don't go away. Adam from Abuja. Thank you so much.
Yes, good evening, everybody. Very interesting session, and I've been blessed by the 2 speakers. Very insightful teachings, I will say. I think for me, the truth of the matter is, looking at the 2023 budget, we are in very precarious situation. We are in an environment where income will be shrinking. Globally, we are talking about recession. We are in an environment where pay rise will be difficult because even companies will be stretched. We are in an environment whereby prices will have to go up, especially when subsidy is removed. So these are just the reality of our times. And like our main speaker said, everybody just needs to adjust. It's better to make the adjustment before you are forced to adjust. Because when you are forced to adjust, you don't have time to react, and it's usually very painful. This is the beginning of the year. Like the main speaker said, this is the time for us to start to adjust the things that we do, the way we spend, where we go, and even the lifestyle that we have. And this is not only applying to Nigeria, is the whole world. Now the world is talking about recession, and if the developed world are having recession, you can imagine what the impact will be on nations like Nigeria. So we need to tighten our belt. But the beautiful thing about it is, if we make the adjustment early enough, even in the bad times, some people make a lot of money. So don't think because it's hard time means there is no money to be made. No, it just means that you need to position yourself during these hard times so that you are favored. Like the story in the Bible, 7 years of abundance, 7 years of famine. Egypt actually prospered more during the time of famine than during the time of abundance. Thanks.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. And thank you for all that you do for the platform behind the scenes. Thank you for the mentoring and the coaching. Mr. Adam Abameyi is a professional colleague and is joining us from Abuja. Adam, do you want to share your thoughts on any of the aspects we have talked about today?
Yeah, Bimbo, good evening.
Thank you for joining.
Yeah, actually, I joined from the beginning, from the first speaker, Sister Funmi, and I've been following all the discussion. What I want to say is just to thank them for their time, and for you, for your passion. I want to encourage you. Happy New Year, and continue to do this good work. For people online, Bimbo has been my friend and schoolmate right from those days. So I've been following all she's doing. And I can always encourage all our colleagues. We're encouraging her to continue this. For next year, I don't want all of us to start panicking. I'm sure the Lord will guide us. We'll plan towards beginning to adjust. Because if you look at the budget, for those of us in finance, we know it's very tight. But again, like one of the speakers spoke, you just begin to plan and cut. Is it your coat according to your size now? And then I'm sure
according to your material.
According to your material and your size as well too. So we'll begin to plan towards this. Let's not wait till the last minute. Let's gradually begin to adjust. For instance, like the removal of subsidy, we've been on this, and I'm sure it's going to be removed in June. So let's begin to adjust from now so that we'll begin to adjust properly. For those of us in Abuja and maybe in Lagos, we know other expenses like school fees and other things, we need to begin to plan towards that. It's not when it is there that we'll begin to whatever. So let me not take much of our time. It's just to thank Bimbo and all the speakers for this. Professionally, I am in tune with all they've said, and there is an encouragement to all of us. Thank you very much, and Bimbo, continue to do this good work. I appreciate you. Bye.
Right. Thank you so much, Adama. Thank you for joining us from Abuja. Thank you so much. Must apologize to everyone around the call, but I know if it was boring, you all would have left. There are about 38 people around the call now. Sorry, we exceeded our 1 hour by 25 minutes, or I think maybe we'll get to 30 minutes. Funmi, your last comment, you have last word for us? Anything that is hot that you want to share before?
Yes. I'm very happy that Remy, or you and Remy, spoke about giving. When we talk about financial fitness, financial freedom, and all of that, that's very concentrated on self. But I think that particularly in this environment, it's important for us to think about other people. And in my experience, you know, the term "givers never lack" is so completely true. For me, I think about giving as also an investment, okay? Because you're investing in people and you're investing in yourself. Because what you give comes back to you in so many ways. And when people think about giving, often they think about very structured giving, i.e., oh, somebody from their village has called to say, oh, they want to invest in a business, they want 250,000. You know, I think of that as quite structured giving. But there's everyday giving that's also an investment. I'll give you an example. You're standing at the supermarket with 25,000 naira worth of goods to pay. And the man, and this happens to me frequently, there's somebody behind you with the smallest loaf of bread and a bottle of water and crumpled notes in his hands. I often just say, I just pay for everything. So it's that type of giving as well, that doesn't have impact on your financial plan or whatever. Your bottom line. So I'm saying that in everything that we've said here, it's very, very important for us to open our hearts to other people. In all of these things that we're doing, if we are not blessing other people in the way God has blessed us, then I think everything we've talked about here comes to naught, okay? Because we're called upon to be a light unto others. And even in talks about finance and all of that, there's a place for your lights to shine. So I'd like to leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Funmi. Thank you very much. I like the way you explain the giving. It's not only in big things, in small things as well, things that you won't even feel, you know, but we should all watch out to give. And also, you know, you're giving freely, you know, you're a consultant to make this kind of presentation or to join this kind of conversation. Sometimes you have to be paid for it, but you're sharing knowledge freely. Remy also shared freely. You know, my mentors behind the curtains, they give and they share freely. You know, earlier on, I asked you what's the passion, why you're so passionate about doing this, about, you know, trying to help people. And you said because of the experiences that you've seen people make money and then they lose it and all of that. When I started this coaching thing, the motivation really was the fact that there were so many people who are financially dependent on others in Nigeria. You know, in Nigeria, one salary takes care of about 10 families. And like I was saying to Remy earlier on, or maybe it was you, I said, except you don't have a good heart, you know, you can have and not give in this environment.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Funmi. I appreciate your time. I understand your schedule today because we spoke, you know, before the conversation, and I thank you for making our time to attend. Pastor Remy, thank you for making our time to join us this evening. Actually, I should say Remy. Remy, thank you for joining us. You don't want me to put Pastor before your name.
Thank you for asking me.
Pastor Niyi, thank you so much. Adam, everybody around the call, thank you so much. I do apologize for taking 30 minutes extra. I can see my pastor, my main pastor online. Good evening, sir. Pastor Luremi Adebi, thank you, sir. Oh, I don't know if it's mommy that is joining us. Thank you so much. Bidemi, I can see you. Funke, thank you so much, everybody. And I can see Susan Kasonde, I think joining us from Zambia or something.
Oh,
thank
wow.
you. You always join us. Thank you so much. Tina, Mrs. Alade from America, thank you so much. You're all my friends. Without you people, I'll be talking to myself. Funmi and I will be having a conversation, speaking to ourselves. So thank you for joining. Mommy, Fola, thank you for joining. Raphael, Gabriel, I see you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mama.
Thank you.
The recording will be on the YouTube channel soon. Thank you very much.